Thank you so much, ma'am, and good morning, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to another session in continuation with the celebration marking the 10th year since the discovery of the God particle. My name is Adisi Krishna, as ma'am said, and I'm an incoming freshman at Yale University and a very recent alumni of Shiv Nadar School, Noida. Um, it is my honor to bring you yet another special session today devoted to unfolding the art of writing a research paper. And we are honored to have with us today Dr. Anil Chala, Dr. Mayank Agnihotri, Dr. Archana Sharma, and Dr. And Jayati Bhattacharya, who is an educator here at Shiv Nadar School, Noida. To me, research is one of the most beautiful explorations of the innate human curiosity that is driven by the desire to ask why. And writing a research paper based on that research itself is an art form. Today, we have with us a group of curious, excited young researchers, and we hope at the end of this session, they know how they can start their lifelong journey of research. I've had the privilege of going through the process of writing a research paper myself and seeing its transformative effect, not only on the interest of my interest in the subject that I love, but also on myself. But now we would love to hear about the importance of this session from a phenomena in physics herself, Dr. Archana Sharma, who's had a tremendous career in physics that spans over 3 decades, and her contributions to the scientific community continue to flow in. She currently works as the senior advisor for relations with international organizations at CERN and has previously been involved in numerous experiments at the organization. She has fine first-hand experience in the field we wish to explore today, as well as writing. That is a research, it is a privilege to have her here with us today would be a severe understatement. In addition to her contributions to research, Dr. Sharma has founded the non-profit Lifelab Education and Research Foundation in New Delhi in an effort to amplify the reach of science amongst younger minds. Since 2016, the organization has given rise to numerous initiatives that focus on nurturing a spirit of science in school students. And we are glad to inform that Ms. Vinita Sharath, lead program coordinator, STEAM and Science at SNS, has been working voluntarily with the Lifelab Foundation as advisor of STEM and helping us in providing early exposure to latest discoveries in the field of pure science. So Dr. Archana, it would be a privilege for you to start us off and share with us what you see as the importance of this session today, understanding how to write a research paper. Over to you.
Thank you, Adi. And I cannot tell you how amazed I am to listen to you all. How amazed and how privileged I am to see you all so engaged in the subject, so dedicated to actually looking for research at this age and at this stage in your life. When I was in school, you can't imagine the concept of research did not even exist in my mind. So kudos to the educators, teachers, the whole fraternity of the educators in Shiv Nadar, also around the world who to be these kind of things. And I think that we have taken a quantum jump already over the last 30 years. Nevertheless, when we look around in the world, I think that there's still room to improve. And we, as young students, I'm talking about, I would love to see you all on the international stage, jump-starting the Indian community's publications as well, to a point where it can become a reference point. We have amazing scientists, amazing work, amazing research as well. And, we are making an impact, but this impact absolutely be amplified. So thank you very much for the very generous introduction. Yes, I've been very fortunate. I had opportunities which I have been working hard to convert into opportunities for everybody. So nice to invite Vinita ji once again to share this journey of the discovery of the Higgs boson. This is the experiment one of the experiments where it was discovered, and that's part of the team. I belong to this team here that's called the compact muon solenoid, and we will discuss more about it next time. So without taking much away from the stars of today's session, Dr. Mayank Agnihotri and Dr. Chala, it's such a pleasure to be here to be learning about what you have been doing, and also the importance of research writing. You know that there is a series called Frontiers, and in that they have children as editors, they have children as contributors, and they write Nobel-winning science papers, and they do the reviewing as well. So I want to see now as a next step that research papers are written and then contributed to Frontiers. This is a very big international organization, frontiers.org. And who knows that 1 year from now, we are looking at a series of publications from our students. So all the best for the session today. Just a simple pleasure to be here and looking forward to the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, and for sharing with us that dream, because I think that is all that we will all strive to achieve from here on out. Now I am really excited to introduce our esteemed panelists for today, Dr. Anil Chala and Dr. Mayank Agnihotri. Dr. Anil Chala is a senior scientist at the Department of Life Sciences at Shiv Nadar University, teaching undergraduate biology. He has a long pedigree of not only education, but also of research. He co-founded a startup biotechnology company in Hyderabad and is currently involved with a number of research projects focusing on the generation of genetically engineered modeled organisms, rats, mouses, and zebrafish, to understand human disorders. While Dr. Mayank Agnihotri is a passionate chemistry teacher and the head of science at Vidya Gyan Sidapur, who is working very passionately with Carios on cross-campus collaboration in science. We are very excited to have you here today and to have a great discussion about the art of writing a research paper. Yes, Sunita.
We just want 30 seconds to audience that, yes, Dr. Jyoti is with us. He's another very passionate science educator or science communicator. I see, little bundle of energy who keeps doing magic in field of science, educating students. So she will be giving her views at end. She's a passionate chemistry teacher. We also have Matthew. So we'll just take 1 minute, if you don't mind, Adi. Matthew to speak about the session, and then over to you, Adi. You can start. So, Matthew, are you there? Yeah.
Thanks, Vinita. Again, how lovely to see such a great group of panelists. But how also exciting when we're looking at what's happening in the world today, from the God particle and the celebration and the James Webb camera, all this information from the micro to the macro. What is there in the world to discover? So having our students work on research, write papers, they're going to be at the front of those discoveries. So that's education, and what an exciting time to be in education. So congratulations to all the participants. Enjoy the session. And again, to Miss Vinita and the team, wow. Good luck to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, sir. And I think it's exactly that dream that we're chasing. So I think, Vinita ma'am, without further ado, we can start the discussion. So I think we can begin with the basics. So my first question goes to you, Dr. Chala. I think it'll be very helpful for all of us here if you can share with us a brief overview of what exactly is a research paper and how it differs from a review paper, which is the first distinction I think that needs to be made in this discussion.
So I wanted to thanks, first of all, thanks Vinita ma'am, thanks Adi for making me part of this session. The first thing I wanted to share was, I did not even know about a research paper until I was probably an undergrad. But as I went through my journey in research, one of the first things I realized is, doing research, finding out the truths of this universe that's the whole pursuit of science. And one aspect of it is to communicate, right? I think, and it's a social phenomena. We are human beings, so we want to communicate what we find. And it's really a social phenomena because we want to transmit that knowledge from one generation to the other, or one person to another person. And the business of scientific publication started off in the 1600s. It was actually a private affair after the Royal Society was established. Because there was a frenzy of research activity, formal research activity, which started off, and there was so much happening that people said, okay, we need to really have a formal way of communicating all these research findings. Prior to that, and around the same time, people actually published books. They spent their entire year, like lifetimes, digging into something, like really drowning themselves into the pursuit of truth. And then towards the later parts of their years, they would consolidate all that knowledge and write books and publish, right? That's because publishing anything was not easy, right? I mean, because the printing press was relatively new and it was a big deal, right? It was the most sophisticated piece of technology out there to be able to print something. But as printing presses became much more prevalent and the ability to now share also became, the frenzy of scientific activity was increasing. The ability to print things became a little more easy. So by late 1600s, they said, okay, you know what, we should start writing papers. So in a way, it's an artifact of the scientific process, right? It's important to communicate, but writing a paper is not the most essential part. So I'll digress a little bit. I will take only another minute to kind of give an analogy. So I'm sure, so Adi, I will have a conversation with you. So, because we have a lot of people out there, but I'll ask you a couple of questions and maybe you can answer, right? So if you land up in a new place, absolutely new place, it's very gorgeous, it's just beautiful, and you just arrived there. So what do you do? What do you need to navigate that place? Yeah, by the way, you're the first person. So what do you do?
I think the first natural instinct is to find out what all resources you have, what all is there.
So it's a new place and you're supposed to go around and see the place, right? So you use your prior knowledge of, okay, is there a path? Is there no path? Is it wild? Is it curated? Is it nicely manicured or whatever? And then you start charting out a path and you're walking and for the first time, you're walking in that landscape, correct? So what you'll probably need is a map, essentially. Or if there's no map that exists, you create a map, correct? Now, you've done a lot of this for the next 10 years, going to new places and drawing maps, correct? What do you do after like 10 years of doing this exploration? So now you've come back to Noida or wherever you are, home, and you're sitting down. What's your natural tendency?
To share that map with everyone.
Would you now start putting the maps together or would you write a story?
Well, after putting those maps together, you would write a story, yeah.
Because the maps themselves don't really make much sense to somebody who's not explored that place, because they mean a lot to you, correct? And that guides you to write a story. Am I right? And what would you call that when you start writing a book about your travels? What would you call that?
I guess a memoir or
a travelogue, right? So yeah, you could write a memoir of your travels, and so you write travelogues. So that's essentially the difference between a research article and a review article, right? So when you're really navigating a brand new landscape and you're charting out that territory, you are basically using certain skills to map that place, figuring out some details, and you put that thing together. That makes sense a lot to you. Now, for another explorer, a map might immediately make sense, correct? Because you have certain cardinal points on that map and you have maybe dimensions. And so somebody who has done another exploration will look at a map and say, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I can see the topography. I can see the landscapes. I can see, they know how to read the annotation of the map, right? A common person really can't read that unless they're assisted. But a travelogue is a lot more easy because you've now converted all your travels and experiences into a story, right? Now, somebody who doesn't know the language or doesn't understand new places will still have a hard time understanding memoir, but it's a matter of time that they figure out. So I know I've taken more than a minute, but the point is, in scientific research, when you're trying to solve a problem or you're trying to address a question, you use certain tools, and documenting that process of discovery is a research article. And it's an artifact of the process of discovery. It is not the mainstay, right? it's the scientific process is incomplete without communication, but the journey is the most important. Now, having done that a little while, then you can sit down and basically write your memoir, which is like a travelogue. And so once you gain a decent amount of understanding about a topic or a question or a problem or a phenomena, you are able to put these things together and write a review article. I digressed quite a bit, but I hope I made my case.
No, absolutely you did. I think that one of the things that you really poignantly touched upon is the importance of starting that journey itself. And I think that that's one of the things that we should be focusing a lot on today, and on how to get students to start that journey itself and reach eventually the stage where they will be in a position to write a research paper documenting their journey in science. And thank you so much for that. And absolutely no worries in taking the time, sir. We are all here to listen to you and Dr. Agnihotri share your very insightful opinions and understandings of the nitty-gritties of research. So now I'll move to you, Dr. Agnihotri, and ask you that in your position as an educator who works very intimately with high school students, which is what our audience today primarily comprises of, and who we hope to inspire to start their journey of research, what has been your experience with high school students and their desire to do research? And how have you been able to navigate students who've expressed the desire or try to instill the desire to do some research in others?
Yeah, Adi, first of all, can I add something in relation to review paper, if you can give me permission?
Of course, sir, please.
Yeah. So as Anil sir shared everything about a research paper is the original document, whereas if we talk about a review paper, then it's not an original research actually. Review paper is a kind of a summary of the research paper, and it makes the things quite easy. At times it happens a person is looking for a specific topic, not for a complete research, then he can go to a review paper and he can get the specific information. So this is just an add-on. Now, when I'm coming up to the high school students, in India, if we do see, we face some of the toughest competition, some of the toughest in all over the world. Like if you do sit in IIT, JEE examination, it's one of the toughest examination. So students have a tendency, this is the syllabus, this is what I have to prepare, and then day and night, they are completely absorbed in it. So when we talk about creativity, when we talk about research, at times it happens they don't get that much amount of room. But the natural tendency of student is, if there is a problem, they come and say for the case, if there is a problem, what happens when ammonium chloride is dissolved in water? Now, the student is not able to find the answer. Then the second thing is, we say, go and find out what is there in the Google. Then he finds out that ammonium chloride dissolved in water, the answer is not there, but it's given sodium chloride dissolved in water, the reaction is exothermic. Then we say to the student, now form a hypothesis. The hypothesis goes on like this: sodium chloride dissolved in water, the reaction is exothermic. It means hypothesis can be, when ammonium chloride will be dissolved in water, the reaction might also be exothermic. Now this is the hypothesis. Then we go to the next stage. The next stage is experimental stage. Here we say to the student, now dissolve ammonium chloride in water and measure the temperature of water earlier, and after dissolving ammonium chloride, see what's the change in the temperature of the solution. So earlier, if the temperature of the water was 30 degrees Celsius, after dissolution of ammonium chloride, if the temperature, the experimental finding was the temperature came out from earlier 30 degrees Celsius, it came out to 20 degrees Celsius. It means the temperature has decreased. So the student can find out the temperature has decreased, the reaction is endothermic. So the hypothesis where he thought the reaction is exothermic, he finds out, no, the reaction is endothermic. And then he writes the conclusion part. Actually, this is research all about. A problem, looking up the probable solutions or the articles which are already present, then experimental stage, and then coming up to result. This is the result. This is the findings that we have got. in mind of high school students, usually it is there that research is something out of world. It will be something very much later on in our life. So they're having very mere knowledge of it. Otherwise, they don't even think about research part. Though research is not that much alien thing. It can be done at the high school level also, with very common problems with the student face there in the classroom, there in the syllabus, or maybe in the day-to-day life. So what we encourage at times student is now, especially in this 21st century, what the best part is, again, internet, Google, and the high school journals which are available. Students can submit their ideas, their experiments, and the peers which are there, the reviewers which are present there, the editors which are present there, they can also guide the students. This is further add-on you can do, and you can get a proper research paper. Also, we need to inform the students, like there is CBSE board, there is International Baccalaureate. These give mark sheets, and these mark sheets have a certain legitimacy. In the same way, research paper provide international legitimacy to your work. This is one of the things that need to be there in the student's mind. So if you later on, say for the case you want to do postgrad or graduation in any of the international university, and you have a research paper in a good journal, you get an international legitimacy that you can focus. You have a very deep knowledge of a certain topic, which at times is just not reflected by your mark sheet. So this is what need to be seeped in the mind of students, that research is possible at high school level.
Absolutely. So that's very true. I think that all high school students have some experience with doing some amounts of, following the scientific method, doing some experimentation. But I think that I'll be very curious to hear from Dr. Chala on how, we can take that small initial curiosity that high schoolers are exposed to, of doing some experimental research, doing some experiments, forming a hypothesis, following the scientific method, which is what research is fundamentally about, and how that can be expanded to expose them to the larger concept of research, in which they can go very, very deep in a subject, have some originality present, which I think forms the core of writing a research paper compared to a review paper.
So I'll share an example, and I know the discussion is focused on high school students, so I will not go into hypotheticals, and I would love to know a little more about your own paper, honestly, at some point during the conversation. So if I can share my screen, so I'll just read it out. This is from the Royal Society. It's called Biology Letters, and I'll reveal what's important in a little bit. So here is a principal finding of this paper. We discovered that bumblebees can use a combination of color and spatial relationships in deciding which color of flower to forage from. We also discovered that science is cool and fun because you get to do stuff that no one has ever done before, right? So you want to guess, there's a reason, and if you cheat on my screen, you get to know the answer. But do you know who has published this? It's actually in a research. It's a peer-reviewed research publication, and these are all the authors. And it turns out it's actually 8-year-olds published scientific bee research, right? A group of British school children, maybe the youngest scientists ever to have their work published in a peer-reviewed journal. In a new paper in Biology Letters, 25 of these kids from Blackerton Primary School report that buff-tailed bumblebees can learn to recognize nourishing flowers based on colors and patterns. This is really a fantastic paper, and you should, there is actually a kid version, like what the kids wrote in their language, and the high school, the teacher who, with the help of some researchers in neuroscience, this question is not some random cute question out there, which people, but they've actually done hypothesis testing. They made, they had an experimental design and stuff like that. So I'll just read this. I read that part. Their discovery is that the buff-tailed bumblebees can learn to recognize nourishing flowers, right? So I can share these in the chat box, but I think some of the most profound questions are asked by kids. Oftentimes, unfortunately, adults fail to recognize the depth of those questions. Either because, it's hard, right? Being an adult is hard because you have so many life experiences that you think, it should already be known, right? It's very common for adults to think that, yeah, it's so obvious that it's probably out there, somebody figured it out. But I think questions that students ask, like especially younger kids, and that actually gets into the realm of high school as well, right? So it's a beautiful time where cognitively there's some sophistication that evolves in the high school age, and that latent native curiosity is still there. If it is not heavily corrupted by too much information overload, where everything as a high school student, I felt everything that is supposed to be known is already known, right? But if that childlike curiosity is still alive, there's a lot of possibilities at a younger stage. So I actually forgot about your question, but I'll make one more comment about this, and I'll ask you to remind me the question again. The point is to be able to look into nature and be honest and say, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. How does it work? Or what is it in some of the details? So if the beginning of a true research endeavor is a question, right? That question might have already been answered by somebody in the past. That's okay. But the only prerequisite and the only requisite to begin a research, the pursuit of research, is a good question. When I say good question, it's not nothing. There's nothing like a bad question, to be honest. When I say a good question, it's a well-framed, clearly laid out question, right? It could be something very ambiguous, like what is air? No, it's actually a profound question, but you need a little bit of thinking should be able to refine that question. What do you mean by what is air, right? Is it the weight of air? Is it the constituents of air? Is it the effect of air on something? Those kinds of things, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I forgot about the question, but did I even answer your question? Or if I didn't, maybe you can reiterate the question for me, please.
I think you answered a better question. That's all right. But I think that my follow-up question to that ties into my initial question would be that, so let's say a high school student does have, that curiosity. They have a question they want to answer. How would you suggest they go about fostering it? I've personally been very fortunate to be surrounded by teachers who still have that childlike curiosity that allows me to foster my own. But let's say others don't. And how do they go about trying to formulate an initial haphazard question into a focused one, and then do subsequent research on it to reach a place where they can add in their own curiosity, their own creativity?
So is it for me or for Dr. Agnihotri?
So you can go first, then I'll
actually, I was not, well, I'll put the question back to you. How did you go about? I mean, can I ask you that question? I mean, I think it's a good time to bring the question out there. Are you there? Yeah. So tell us about your journey, because you are the person. I mean, I didn't write a paper as a high school student, and you did. So what prompted you, and how did you go about? And please tell us that story.
Sure. So I think that was sort of unusual. Because when I sort of came through 11th grade, the end of 11th grade, I was very eager to dip my toes into research, go a little bit deep in subjects, because I'd always been very interested in reading about things, especially astrophysics and physics outside the classroom. And I felt that, research is the best way to delve extremely deep into one subject and explore different facets of it in unparalleled quantities. So I had to be able to pursue that passion for research, or that initial curiosity I had. And there are lots of, programs offered by various institutions that allow you to work with others and undergo the process of research. And one of them I was fortunate enough to join, and that gave us sort of a broad overview of what gamma ray bursts are in astrophysics. And even though we didn't do any research in that, I was very intrigued by the phenomena. And I think I initially just spent time reading about what it is. And there was a very recent discovery that was of the highest energy recorded gamma ray burst ever that happened just a year back. And that caught my attention because, as a physics student, I was always taught to ask why, why was that so high energy and why was it recorded after 40 years of data on gamma ray bursts. And gradually, I started researching more about it, trying to understand, why could that have been? And I came across this plethora of research papers on them. And I mean, I didn't know anything about astrophysics. And it was just trying to understand a little bit of the research papers I was reading one by one to understand, okay, what could they be? And through that process, I realized, I can try to solve this question in my own way, because the way that it was being tackled seemed to be not the standard for how theoretical papers had talked about gamma ray burst detection about 20 years back. And reading theoretical research papers, actual papers on the phenomena, I saw some disconnect, and I was like, let me just explore that. Let's see where this leads me. So I think it was somehow just this curiosity to understand the answer, and thankfully the support of great teachers who had taught me how to think about research, possibly because of the international baccalaureate design itself that allows you to understand the process of research to writing an extended essay, that I understood the broad framework of how to go about it. And I think just taking it step by step of trying to answer small questions that were catching my attention eventually led me to a conclusion that I thought, hey, this is interesting. Why don't we convert this into a paper and see where that goes?
So I think beautiful. It's fantastic. And it's actually not surprising, but that's the journey of most scientists, right? You get really curious and you start. Now, the question you asked is, so seeing you or just learning about the possibility of conducting research or even reading about research might excite people, but they don't know where to start, right? And just I'm sure everybody has some natural phenomena that really excites them, or like paying attention, I think, is the most important. And I think one of the curses of the current ecosystem is that there's just so much distraction that to fall in love with that one thing and consistently be with that is the problem, I feel, right? Because as soon as you fall in love with something, there's something else in the next 5 minutes that attracts you. So taking time off to really mull over some of these things is something useful. Some people, and I was not one of them, I'll confess, I didn't have the attention span to read like 2 pages at a time, even until college, honestly. But I was actually a person, and this is just looking back into my own life. While I could not really make myself to read things, I could just sit there with a leaf and look at it for hours together. Dissect it, draw it, give all kinds of things with that leaf or different kinds of leaves, right? So that is the other aspect. So students who are able to pick up books and papers and just delve into literature, that's one way of going about. The other thing is just observation and just getting involved with nature itself. Now, with physics, you would say like, oh, how can I do gamma ray bursts, right? I mean, my entry into I'm an amateur astronomer, and that came out much later. But something like I heard of the American Association for Variable Star Observers, right? So essentially, there are people, including students, who would look at every day or every week. They go into the sky and they just observe these variable stars. And there are actually variable stars which are even, you can observe them in a dark side without binoculars or telescope. You don't even need that. You just try to just look at these stars and see, and there's a chart of variable intensity of stars, right? So you basically learn that a little bit and you just keep observing. And the funny thing is, many amateur astronomers, they contribute these data points into a database out there, and it's an open source database that people now, actually researchers who don't have time to go and observe these, they depend on these data points to do their analysis. Now this falls into the realm of citizen science, right? So there are actually stories, I mean, there are studies right now in India about the first blooming of, let's say, mango trees or certain trees. And with climate change, these patterns are changing. So in the realm of citizen science, there's a lot that students can do right now. Behavior of dogs, behavior of crows, behavior of cattle in the urban settings, for example, right? So there are a lot of avenues to understand nature out there, and scientists, quote unquote, they don't have time to do some of these observations. So to summarize what I've just said in the last couple of minutes is, one is to delve into the published literature. The other is to get involved with the observations themselves, right? And there are lots of citizen science projects in ecology, in astronomy. In fact, if somebody's interested in, like, they're geeky about computer simulations and stuff, predicting protein structure, which is really difficult. So you can actually, there's a beautiful software called, it's an online tool called Foldit. So these are real-time challenges. So you can actually understand chemical bonds and design peptides based on thermodynamics and peptide bond, this thing. And you submit it to the Institute of Protein Science in Seattle. And if you win, when they say win, they will synthesize that protein and see how it behaves based on your predictions. So there are a lot of these, and I am aware of a few, but if you just go in and say a citizen science, a student involvement in scientific research, there are lots and lots of opportunities right now. So again, last summary, you can either read, if you are a person who likes to read, that's one path. The other path is to just get into research in terms of observation and documenting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those thoughts. Before I hand over Dr. Agnihotri, I'll just add that I think that today there are innumerable number of resources that allows high school students to publish their findings of just observations as well in a structured manner. Numerous resources that I would urge everyone to explore, and you'd see the phenomena that high school research has become and how enthralling it is to take part in it. Handing over to Dr. Agnihotri. So if you have any thoughts.
Dr. Agnihotri, just one submission to the audience. Children, this is a very closed and safe platform to ask questions. And you are most welcome. Raise your hand and ask question. Unless you ask, you can ask any question. No question is very good or very bad or very stupid or intelligent. Questions itself is it's a beautiful thing to start journey from here. So you can raise your hand, children, and ask questions. Also, there's another thing is, the session will end in another 20 minutes, but we do understand the gravity of the session. If you all wish, we will have a follow-up session where you can understand the steps also. Or if you want a bit of hand-holding, we will provide all those. So over to you, Dr. Agnihotri.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. Adi, please, if you can pardon, what's your question, Adi?
So the question I had posed to Dr. Chala was, how can high school students foster that curiosity to ask why and take the questions that they have and build them out in a structured way and pursue that question or through their own process of research?
Okay. So at high school level, as I said to you earlier, the most important thing, as Anil also shared, you need to have a question. And you need to be very enthusiastic to find out the answer for this question. What's the reason behind it? Like there should be like fire. So, and then like if you approach, teachers do at times help you. They like can tell you what the process is, as like there's a universal process for writing any research paper or identifying to the process which need to be followed. So problem, then after that, whatever is the background information available, then forming up the hypothesis, after that experiment, and then the results, which can be thoughtful. In case of high school students, now there are some specific journals which are actually for the high school students. Like a few of them I would like to name, like Journal of Student Research, High School Edition, and International Journal of High School Research. So these are some journals which specifically take care of the students' research work. Here, the students can, whatever, like as per the format given for the manuscript, students can submit the manuscripts, and then the reviewer there in these journal can further send the research paper for peer review. while the peer review is taking place, they can inform that what changes you need to do further. They will inform you. And either they will say, no, the paper is of no use. So usually this does not happen. They are very helpful. In case of peer review, they inform that they give you remarks, they give comments that these are the changes which are to be done in the paper. Gradually, you to make the changes, the student does make the changes with the help of the teachers or maybe any of the university professor with whom the student is in touch. And after that, after making certain changes, finally they get a PDF copy, and in about 5 or 6 months, they have a published research paper. So these journals also guide the students also, like what are the what further changes you need to make in your findings. So this is, I would like to say at present, which is possible at the high school level.
Can I just add one thing here with your permission, Adi?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
First of all, there is a Himanshi want to ask question, but I'll just take 30 seconds. Audience, this is very important to understand what discussion is taking place. And believe me or not, the extended essay, what Adi took it for, and which is a kind of mini research paper, and we are expecting something like that for presentation when Archana comes, was pretty tough. And the kind of research he did in his extended essay in astrospace, which was many things were out of syllabus. So when he approached me, I read it. I said, yeah, you are ready to get any marks, because when it goes there, maybe that person may not be knowing all this. Because believe me, when he presented his first draft, we were 4 teachers, me, Neeraj ma'am, Ravi sir, and Hari sir. We read it, we marked it, and many times we ourselves have to read it because we didn't know what he's saying. So you understand the kind of level he has gone in his extended essay. Because see, our limitations was that we are, we have left our studies long before, but he was adamant that he has to write this. He was adamant. And believe me, we never discouraged him. We said, yes, you go ahead with your dream. Just go ahead. If you want to do this paper, go ahead with this. So that restlessness, that guts is also required. And I can see this in each and every student who is present in this audience. I can see that guts, because this session is something very, very academic, but still on a holiday you all have joined. So thank you. Over to Himanshi, who wants to ask question, and then Adi can take it over. Audience, please write your question in chat box so that the panelists can read the question. Himanshi, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, sir, I want to ask that, how can we go in more depth, while researching and all? And are there any different ways to present our paper, and so that it will be more informative also, and also it will have a good impression on the reader who will read it?
If you would like, I will just repeat that question, ma'am, because she put it in the chat box as well. Himanshi is asking Dr. Agnihotri and Dr. Chala, how can we go more in depth while researching? So I think that the audience wants to understand that if they have a question, what is a good way to go about researching further about the question? Because I think that especially in certain topics, without an initial background information on any topic, it's hard to start with a question that intrigues people. And the second part of the question is that after, let's say, someone has done their research and have their conclusions that they've jotted down, what are the different ways they can present their research paper? Dr. Chala, if you would like to go first.
Yeah, so in fact, I've been working with a bunch of students in IB, writing their extended essays. And for the last 3 summers, I've been conducting summer workshops for them to directly get involved. And I'm more than happy to specifically in another session, or I can actually ask some of these students to come and talk about their research. And this is, I'm trained in genetics. So there are questions that are unanswered. They're probably not earth shattering, but they're really important questions, right? And I know for a fact that if students can contribute, and then that contribution can actually help the scientific community. Having said that, the point was, and trying to address Himanshi's question about, okay, how do I start? How do I get into the depth of it, right? I think today is a much better day than in the past. There are all these online magazines and newsletters where, for example, even I have a certain experience and expertise, but I don't know everything in biology, right? So I am learning on a daily basis. So there is a magazine called The Scientist, or there's Science Daily, and a bunch of these. I definitely follow The Scientist regularly, and they do these short snippets of research articles. So there's a one-pager that they write about what is this new finding. And before the end of the session, maybe I'll pull out something interesting and I'll show it on the screen. But that's a great start, because they take somebody, usually they are PhDs who've transitioned into making things easier for a larger lay audience. So they take something really cool and they summarize it and they put it in a certain context so that it's easily understandable. And I'm actually a couple of stories which are going on in the back of my head. But by the time we finish, maybe Dr. Agnihotri's comments, I'll find that particular story. And then they give a reference to that article, right? What is that article that they're summarizing in this simplified version? So since I've been working with high school students, I've realized, and I do this regularly with first year undergraduate students, is a little bit of a team-based discussion about these. Now, the reality, this is another important point I want to share. Research is not an individual sport. It's a team sport, right? And a lot of things are developments and progress in science is made not by individuals. Even in the rare case that one individual has contributed, it is actually because of the ecosystem. There's a lot of communication happening back and forth. A particular instance can be, or a particular discovery can be driven by an individual, but usually it's the ecosystem that helps that happen. So start with a popular article which is directly connected to a research article, and take the help of somebody. I would love to sit with somebody who is interested in reading that paper. And it is a process. Adi, you are nodding your head, probably because of your own experience. It is not like watching a web series which happens automatically, right? Now, somebody really made an effort to make that connection, right? So they made a story out of it to make it easy. So even that, somebody like me sleeps through some of these shows. I can't even watch an entire episode without sleeping these days. But even to watch a reasonably engaging story, you need to have some patience and some attention, correct? So, and research articles are weird in a sense, especially professional journal articles are a weird language in their own, right? So it's not easy. It looks like English, but it is not English, right? It takes effort. You need help to navigate these. So Himanshi, just coming back. So if there's a question that even excites you right now, reach out, and there's a lot of scientists who would love to be part of a conversation. And oftentimes at a younger age, conversations are better starters than individual soul studies, right? Because they can be intimidating just because the jargon is very different. The language is different. So catch a story that excites you, and then just find that next connection to what was the underlying research study that gave rise to this insight. And I'll find in the next few minutes, I'll find an example and show it on the screen. But I hope I answered your question, Himanshi.
Adi, I'm just noting time. There are 10 minutes more. There are two very good questions in chat box. I don't know the session. Maybe we may have to take a follow-up session, Adi, that you will announce at the end, because 1 hour is not enough with the kind of audience, panelist, and the dashing moderator what we have on screen. Over to you, Adi. Please ask those questions in chat.
Sure, ma'am. I would just like to say one quick thing. So I think you touched on something very important, which is something that I went through myself, is that the distinction between trying to find something earth-shattering at age 16, 17, 18, and just doing something that contributes to scientific understanding in the scientific community. And every little piece of discovery adds something to the scientific community that can transform things in ways we can't imagine. And I think what held me back initially as well was trying to find something earth-shattering. And I would request everyone to not follow in my footsteps and find whatever little questions you can find and try to go as much in depth on them as you can, even if you don't think, oh, maybe this isn't that big, it isn't that interesting. Everything that you're able to add to the scientific community has immense meaning. But I will take
I want to elaborate on that point just briefly. You hit the nail on the head. Never overestimate or underestimate the question, right? I mean, you might not say like, I want to find an earth-shattering thing is also a bad idea. Or maybe this is a stupid question is also a bad idea, right? It's a genuinely interesting question to you, so you follow it. And sometimes, and my hero is Gregor Mendel, in his lifetime, he was basically told by everybody, his peers, that his discoveries are not very important. And 25 years after he died, people rediscovered what he found out, and we call him the father of genetics. The poor man doesn't even know that, he's being celebrated as the father of genetics. For him, it was just curiosity and trying to figure out how inheritance happens, right? And he was not an expert. I mean, you should read, Hugo Eltis wrote a beautiful book. It's now available, and I think I have a copy somewhere. I'm more than happy because I'm in the neighborhood. You should read what happened. And there's a couple of really good books about what he went through. And the criticisms he got, and he basically gave up his research. He got into something else. And 25 years after he died, what he discovered is the basis for what, is the revolution called modern genetics.
Adi, may I request you to do one thing, because there are some audience who have blasting questions one after one, and it will be injustice to these students if the questions are not answered.
Absolutely.
So officially, if you wish, we can wind up with Ms. Anju Soni and Dr. Jayati Bhattacharya, our own Jayati Bhattacharya, a kind of closer, and those who are interested can stay for another 15 minutes because till 12 o'clock our official time, and obviously we'll have more sessions like this. Over to you, my dear Adi.
Sure, Ma, absolutely. That sounds like a great plan, and I'll just hand over the stage to Ms. Anju Soni for her comments.
Thank you, Adi. And I'll start by saying it was wonderful to see you here. And it was really a very engaging session. Thank you, Dr. Chala and Dr. Mayank Agnihotri, for your presence today. And research, like all of us know, and as you have already mentioned, that research is a very, very important and a very, very effective tool to build on that curiosity that the student has to know more and arrive at certain conclusions, I would say arrive at an informed decision. So I think the way ahead for education actually is to bring in this research into our curriculums. So thank you so much. And thank you to Vanita ma'am and everybody else who's present here, who keep us on the toes with such wonderful, engaging sessions through the week as well as over the weekends. Thank you so much. Back to you, Adi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you. Dr. Jayati Bhattacharya, ma'am, if you would like to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Adi. I would just like to reiterate 2 points that are, takeaways from what Dr. Chala and Dr. Agnihotri was sharing through your very deftly, carved questions. Adi, must say, compliment to you on that. Dr. Chala, students, this is for you. This is my takeaway. You must have made your notes and your takeaways. Is that what I gather from Dr. Chala is he reiterated on the term curiosity. So the curiosity is whether it is latent, whether you are nurturing it, and it always comes to the forefront if you are a good observer. As a scientific community, we must begin with our observations. Yes, reading is important, but as Dr. Chala said, even when I am writing a paper, I think that who is going to read my paper if I am not able to read others? So reading with tenacity and taking, small steps at a time. I may not finish one page at a time. So I've said, okay, one paragraph a day. So taking it slow, but progressing. So I think another thing that Dr. Chala mentioned was the journey. It was a very important distinction between review article and research paper. So slowly you will gain understanding in this. And I gathered from Dr. Agnihotri is that he reiterated the steps. And it was a very beautiful example that he gave is when you find that you want to find out how does ammonium chloride and water react, but you are finding out that the literature there is talking about sodium chloride and water, but then you go back and experiment, design an experiment, and then find out that what you predicted, what your hypothesis was, is different from what your results are. So all of these steps, actually, when you have this, then only you can think of putting it down on a paper, creating a story out of it, a narrative of your journey, from asking the question to finding and explaining your findings, is what makes the main content of a research paper. Having said that, and teaching in high school students, I would really also advise students to go into the website and look at the next generation science standards. The science and engineering practices are talking about various steps that can nurture that curiosity that Dr. Chala was referring to. I will just give one example here, if you allow me, Vinita ma'am, because scientific inquiry is my area of study, and I just want to share this with the students, is that one of the, not steps, but one of the journey process is in scientific writing is argumentation with evidence. So how do you collect that evidence, and then how do you argument, and this argumentation is supporting that evidence. So go to next generation science standards. Dr. Chala shared some of the journals. Dr. Agnihotri shared some of the journals where students can publish their research writing. And yes, all of us are here whenever you need to reach out. So thank you, Dr. Chala. Thank you, Dr. Agnihotri, and Adi for that deftly carved out questions. And of course, Vinita ma'am for giving us this platform.
Thank you so much, Jayati ma'am. I think that it's clear from everyone's comments that, we've basically just scratched the surface of what research is, what the process of writing a research paper is. And we evidently have so many more questions to answer from the audience and so many other things to discuss about how to write a research paper, how to write an argument with evidence, and what are the different ways of publishing. And these are all steps very, very important steps in the research journey. I think you can all look forward to a lot more sessions and that talk about these steps and bring together different aspects of writing a research paper. So I think it seems obvious we've run out of time, but we don't want to leave any questions. So if Dr. Chala and Dr. Agnihotri, you can quickly address some of these questions. The first one is, sometimes people don't understand what we are trying to tell them, what we're trying to make them understand or tell how our research works, but how can we convince them or make them understand?
The question is not very clear to me, so I'll pass it on to Dr. Agnihotri. But Adi, I will mull over it and maybe send you an email.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Who is asking this question, Adi?
This question is by Durgesh Chaudhary. I'm not sure if he's still with us.
Durgesh, are you there? You can ask and you can make us understand your question.
Okay, maybe I can try to give the answer if he is not here. Like, he has written that he's asking a question which no one is able to understand. So actually, when you are going for research, the most important thing is you need to be ready to at least explain what you want to know. So if someone is not able to understand, try to segregate in such a manner so that someone can understand. And then certainly you will be able to get something or another from someone. One thing more, science is all about systematic knowledge. And when we really go and look towards research, the best part about it like today we got to meet some of the best people, some of the best minds, some of the best souls. So research allows you to meet some of the best people here on this planet through the review work and various other processes. So what the question the child has asked, no one is able to understand his question, then he can further just divide it into parts. And the first and foremost thing is that someone need to get what the person is asking. This is what I understood. Yeah.
I mean, having conversations is important. I mean, it's not again, if it's a lot of these things will get clarified over conversations. So it could be peers, it could be teachers, it could be someone else. That's engage in a conversation, and the questions will surface by themselves.
Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
I was about to, Adi, I'll just take half a second to say that Miss Vinita, that if for the teachers, a session with Dr. Chala, Agnihotri, and all of us together who are into researching, and that how can we develop this curiosity and also foster and nurture and help our students in this journey. I think one session for educators only.
We'll have in physical space. We'll have, ma'am, in physical space. Thank you, Jati ma'am. What a brilliant idea. Dr. Challa has to come again. Thank you. Adi, is there any other question, Bacha?
If possible, I think, ma'am, there's just two more questions that we can quickly address.
Yes, please.
If Dr. Chala and Agnihotri can give us some of more of their precious time. So the first one is Apurva Pathak asks, taking a hypothesis, I was reading a topic, I got a query and researched on it, but I couldn't find its reason. I want to actually write my question and find it. So my research paper can my research paper contain only my question based on data available? And the second part of the question is, what is the word limit for writing a research paper?
Before, sir, you give answer, I don't see Apurva in audience, but I don't know. I hope Jati ma'am, she is from one of the campus. Please answer this answer so that they can watch on YouTube later on. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Chala, would you like to?
Yeah, so it turns out actually, even within this professional, formal scientific papers, there are a lot of different kinds of things. So there's something, if you take a journal like Nature, you can actually do something called a letter, right? And letters can be like one page. And there are all these categories, different journals have different formats. And now we have some reasonably well done, it has its own negatives, but they're open source pre-publications, right? So and you'll be surprised. Some of these papers are one-pagers because they're very clearly written. And just as a historical note, it's probably, I'm corrupting young minds already, but the 1953 paper by Watson and Crick, in fact, that's not the only paper, just for historical clarity. There were 3 back-to-back papers in the 1953 April 25th edition of Nature. These are very famous papers. They are available. This is to describe the structure of DNA. The paper which got really famous and eventually quoted many, many times by Watson and Crick is 1.5 page with one diagram hand-drawn. But it had so much clarity. So Apurva, to answer your question, don't worry about the limit of writing. So that's a distraction in my opinion. If you have to write a book, then go ahead and write a book. Let somebody not determine or limit your words if you have to tell a story which takes a book, right? The point is, how clear is your thinking? And if it's one page, let it be one page. If it's a book, let it be a book. So don't get yourself constrained at this point in life about understanding nature and getting into the depths of it, right? Some of these things are just honestly clerical things. Journals come up with these different segregations just for ease of communication, right? So, but coming back to, I could find I couldn't find its reason. I don't quite understand what you mean, but the point, again, I'll reiterate, to get that clarity is the most important thing, right? And it's a journey, like all of us have made, I mean, Adi and all of us have indicated. If it is not clear in your head, it's probably not ripe yet. Because the moment it is ripe, you cannot stop that clarity. So it will come out. So if it is not clear to you, that means you need a little more work on it. Just sometimes just mulling over it and thinking about it, and maybe scribbling. In fact, one more thing to keep in mind, and I'm sure in IB, procedurally, I understand this. I go through this myself with some students, is don't expect your, I mean, my first drafts are 100% useless. But I have to write that first draft, because unless I write that first draft, I can't tear it, right? My first draft is completely torn apart. And that gives me clarity to write my second draft, which gets some kind of a semblance of order. So if you have not written your first draft, and even if you write your first, and then you have to write your first draft. If your first draft doesn't make sense, it's okay. Tear it up and write your second draft. Just to give you one more anecdote, I finished my PhD, I was writing my dissertation, and I had a very clear idea of what my dissertation was. It was 6.5 years of work. And I write this introduction, which I thought was like brilliantly written. And I took it to my mentor and he said, like, what is this junk? This is nonsense. And he literally tore the whole thing, and I had to start from scratch. That day I had a heartbreak. I said, this was so clear in my head. This is a distillation of all my 6.5 years of research as an introductory chapter. But I had to, suck it up and just say that feeling of disappointment. And I had to take a very new look at my own introduction and said, yeah, that doesn't make sense. And that gave me clarity, right? That first draft, which was useless, was the beginning for a reasonably well-drafted second draft, right? So if it's not clear, just stick to it, right? The good things will come out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chala. Dr. Agnihotri, would you like to add any more thoughts on what Dr. Chala said, or we can move on to the last question?
Yeah, just one-liner. Writing paper is just like writing story. Story can be short, story can be a bit longer, but the message should be very clear. That's what Anil sir was also saying. Things should be very much clear in your mind, and same should come on your paper. That's it.
There's a question from Urjit. Obviously, that question need to be elaborated in another, probably for 20-15 more minutes. But Adi, if you can take Urjit's question a little bit, and we will continue in the next session more about it.
Absolutely. And it's a very important question, ma'am, as you said. Yes. So just last question, I think, to wrap up today's session is, what are some strategies for going through extensive literature in a way that we gather the relevant details while doing that in the least amount of time possible? The smiles tell me, so that's not an easy question to answer.
Anil sir, would you like to answer it? I
think that's your question. I think that's clearly your question.
Okay, if that's the case, my answer is C. There's no shortcut. In fact, in my mind also, this question will be there, but actually you have to go through. And you are that much good researcher as much you have a habit to read the research papers. That's very important. Anil sir, if you can further elaborate it.
No, that's it. I think this is on the last, because we are ending, I really want to leave the session with a note of caution. There is this there's this pressure now, and unfortunately it's all over. I see that I'm on a few international panels. There is this pressure on writing research articles or writing some of these things, and I understand. So but that's not how it's done, right? Now basically everything is becoming like that, unfortunately, where the end is more important than the journey, right? And I understand the practicalities of that, because there is admissions, there is trying to impress admissions committees, trying to get to good schools and stuff. But all good things take time, right? Now, I was not one of those early bloomers where I was able to think very clearly in my 8th grade. Just to give you an idea, Unfortunately, this is going to be on record. One of my juniors was extraordinary. He was a genius. He was a year behind me. He was literally a genius, and I don't want to name him because he's very well known in the country. So he apparently, this is one of my math teachers who came to class one day, and she was really in praise of him. And she said, he reinvented Newtonian, like Newton apparently did something called something that Newton discovered, right, in mathematics. I don't even know that. Now she came and said, this kid actually in 6th grade, he rediscovered, nobody told him, right? Nobody told him that this is what Newton did. By playing with numbers, he discovered something that Newton discovered 300 years, whatever number of years ago, right? I think it's called interpolation or something. So Newton's interpolations. So by playing with numbers, he discovered that. So I went to the teacher very naively and said, like, how do I do that? I also want to do it. She said, nobody knows how he did it, right? Now, of course, he was playing with numbers from his childhood. And so I was actually disappointed as all through my high school that like, oh, when will I do an original thinking, right? Now, this is for those of you who are like me, right? Where I was not there yet, but just be patient. Am I a great scientist? I'm not, but I have a lot of fun doing science, right? That's the most important thing. Are you having fun? Are you learning something? And other things will unfold. Maybe you are not writing the world famous extended essay, but that's okay, because this is a really long journey. And if you really love this journey, things will unfold. So don't, beat yourself down if you are not able to discover the next, greatest thing out there. And we will all have contributions to this planet, one way or the other, right? So I think that just being joyful with this journey is very important. And in terms of the nitty-gritty, I think don't get bogged down with that stuff. Don't let this whole exercise go with it. I think it's probably a fun activity. Just take it as a fun activity to write an extensive essay and to probably get a little deeper. And if your heart is not there, just find out where your heart is. You might be a musician who's not going to write research articles, but that's okay, because you might be writing something about the interdisciplinary nature of music and the neuroscience and the physics of it. And it might take some time. So that's the only cautionary note I want to leave with. And the nitty-gritty, the details of how to write a paper, it's a journey, and I'm more than happy to be with some of you to go through this process. And I think in all seriousness, some of these, IB or any of these things, they're introducing the idea of writing research articles is to give you a flavor of that process, right? So go through the process, enjoy the process. Don't make it one more stressful thing in your life, right? It's a fun thing. Do the best you can, and you learn something.
I'm glad, Dr. Chala, that you brought that note of precaution, which is very important at this point when they are just high school students. And it's not that something that your life depends upon and you really have to publish and get into. That is really another world altogether. But it is about how to get started with your journey, with your curiosity, and enjoy the process. Learn more. The paper publishing and all of that will come eventually when you will feel like, okay, this is something novel that I have come to know and want to share with the world. But before that, start with the process, enjoy the journey, and learn more. There is time. Don't rush. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think, thank you so much, Dr. Chala and Dr. Agnihotri and Jayati ma'am, for bringing in that aspect. I think that's something that I strive to do when I was going through the entire journey, and I hope to go through the journey as I grow older, of research, which is truly just enjoying a subject or a topic that you love, and seeing where that leads you without having any particular end goal in mind, because that's what often drives you away from the pure joy of it. But I think that brings us to the end of this session. I will have Vinita ma'am say a few words, but I would just like to thank Dr. Agnihotri and Dr. Chala for being here and I truly loved having this discussion. It was an honor to be moderate this session and to have the opportunity to speak with you. I hope the audience enjoyed and learned a lot. But also I urge them to look forward to more sessions and to start their journey of researching, not writing research papers, but researching for the love of researching. And I'm sure it'll take them to very, very great places, and they will truly learn a lot and enjoy the process. So thank you so much, everyone. And Vinita ma'am, say a few words.
This is our student Adi. As I told you, Dr. Chala and Dr. Mayank Agnihotri, that, once I hand over the things to Adi, I don't have to sit with him, to do practice or anything. So Adi, there are no words to say thank you. And you just said yes in a very short notice. And we all know that you are going on a journey and you are going to join University of Yale and you're going to do astrophysics. So I'm so very happy. The reason why I'm happy, that sometime I may ask you to take session, okay? So do not forget this. You owe me always. And there are no words. I just want to add one more line, Dr. Chala. There are so many students here who are equally passionate. Like I can see Achal Vinod from university, who is going to University of Cambridge. Naman Goyal is there, and Urjit, and many students. I'm sure with this session, you just wait, and we will mentor with your guidance, Dr. Chala. And sometime I'll ask also Jayati ma'am and Adi to pitch in. They will definitely do some miracle. And very rightly said by, don't be in peer pressure, just enjoy. Even if you type and make a story type or something which you want to publish, please go ahead. There's nothing wrong or right. It's only that what your passion says, just enjoy it, just do it. We'll have another session. If you guys demand, please write a mail to me if you want another session. May I request Praveen sir to switch off YouTube, and may I request Achal Vinod